All right, let's jump right into it. As everybody listening is probably aware, because the audience loves the coin, we had coin earnings 30 minutes ago.
Oh my God.
And some people are confused because they saw smashing numbers, right?
The numbers, we crushed the quarter.
So I saw revenue was like what 1.6 billion versus 1.3 or something like that.
The 1.3 expected, 1.6 actual, but against a comp of 900 million. So like growth was outstanding. Earnings growth even better. And like I know you were like short these earnings, right?
Yes, I was short them via call. I sold calls.
Sold calls to like hedge your long position.
Yeah.
And I took the opposite side of this trade, right? And I think like my thought process going into this was like, well, I know that the fundamentals, like the earnings, are going to beat, but I don't know what the market's response to those earnings are going to be. But I wanted exposure, so I sold puts and used the premiums to buy calls, and those calls are going to expire worthless. But I think my puts are also going to expire worthless for the counterparty. So, I think that's like a pretty good way to express a lottery long position.
It's a big nothing burger for you.
Yeah, but I mean, like if I would have played it the way you did, I would have collected some juicy premiums. If I didn't YOLO the long calls.
Yeah. I think we said a few episodes ago, I suspected that earnings might end up being sort of like a local top. Yeah, we closed 228, I think, on the day today, and 220 after hours last I checked. So we are we're down a decent amount after earnings. I think a lot of people in the Discord I saw are a little confused. Why did this happen?
Yeah.
They were so good. Why am I down money? Why are all the options I bought now worthless?
Yeah. Earnings great, stock down. Why? You wanted that to come to me?
I have an answer. I just thought you wanted to.
No. I was just I was just playing the role of like why. Why guy.
So the written expectations, right? Just because you beat the expectation that's on the written, that's not necessarily what actually the market is expecting, right? So there's this funny thing crypto Twitter does sometimes where they think like they're the only people in the world who like understand things. They're like, no, Wall Street, they can't possibly comprehend how bullish these earnings are going to be. Like nobody knows, right? In reality, like earnings are priced in before they happen, like the run up in the stock.
Yeah, I want to support your idea there because like Coinbase even publicly announces what their transaction volumes were, their trading volumes were, like every month. So like
you can just see this stuff.
Yeah, so you can kind of see that stuff.
Yeah.
But I will say that the stock did have quite a bit of run up intraday, before the close. So I think the stock kind of did move on earnings. It like on the net, it was positive. Like it moved down and after.
Yeah, we ripped from 200 or so to 228.
Yeah.
Right, in a span of 2 days.
Yeah.
So solid ripperoonie there. Solid rip. 20% move basically.
So I want to ask you, looking forward now. Like, I think there are still people in our community that are in this earnings trade because that like expires tomorrow. But then also I want to talk about looking beyond that too. Do you have any opinions?
My opinion is still that this is probably going to go into the 170s. I really like 177-ish as a target. That's purely like a price action thing. I told you guys a while back, like I had been selling options in this zone. This is kind of like a thick monthly support area, this kind of 270 or so region. Had a bit of a blow off top in altcoins, maybe not like a permanent one, but certainly like a bit of a blow off. Bitcoin, everything's up. At best, you need things to cool off a little bit. At worst, you could be going into a down cycle for a little bit. So, yeah, I don't think coin is going to be spared from that. As crypto goes, so goes coin. I think there are a couple narratives going on in crypto right now. We can kind of talk about what that might look like for the next couple of months a little bit later.
Yeah.
I want to touch on that.
Let's stick on the coin for now.
But yeah, as you said, like earnings are sort of like okay, like cool, it's done. What are you going to do for me next quarter, right? And
yes,
like the guidance, the expectations of next quarter, looking around are just like, maybe this isn't going to be super great.
Yeah, and I think the guidance was a little modest. It wasn't like a blow you away guidance. But like I'll look at it like this from like this near term trade, right? This like earnings trade. I basically think that trade's over. But I will say that it's easy to play like armchair after the fact, like armchair quarterback afterwards, where you're like, oh, well, like if it like does nothing, you're like, well, see, it does nothing. But if it also pumped, then you would just describe the narrative, be like, well, yeah, we knew it was going to pump because like the numbers were so good. Like nobody knows how the market's going to respond in advance. Like when you're buying fucking 1 day expiration options, you're just kind of gambling. Like if you're buying like one weeklies, like, nobody knows what's going to happen in the week.
Yeah, and one mistake people make with options too is they just think it's like a price thing, and it's not. Like volatility is like a huge component of it. There's like massive implied vol coming into these earning events. You're sort of paying for that in the price of the option, and like you have to outpace that expectation by quite a bit to make up for that vol premium. And then you have the vol crush, of course, after earnings, which just decimates.
Yeah, and like tomorrow there's going to be a vol crush. So I'm following on Interactive Brokers. They have you can look at the call options volume at like certain strikes. So like the majority of the call options volume was at the 260 strike. So in all likelihood, we're not going to hit that. Those are all going to expire worthless.
Do you think? So FOMC the other day, right? I ended up longing a bunch of. Like a lot of like Solana was what I ended up sort
longing
of
things because
you have people hedging coming into this event, right? They're
Yes.
buying a bunch of puts, and when everybody's buying puts, the dealers who sell the options, right, they sort of have to go short the underlying to be able to neutralize as like a hedge, right?
Yes.
And then as that event passes and like nothing materializes, and you have like the vol decay, right? The market makers have reversed that position.
It unwinds.
They buy back everything that was short, and then you have this sort of lift, and you saw like Bitcoin and the S&P yesterday kind of have this like pump, only to just basically like insta retrace the whole thing.
Definitely, and I think I get where you're going at. Like the inverse could happen.
Are we going to see the inverse now?
inverse
Like, are you
could
actually
happen.
going to see everybody unwind longs on coin?
Yeah. Because my presumption was you get a lot of call option buyers on Coinbase. The market makers have to hedge that as price gets close to those strikes. Market makers have to buy the shares, but when those options expire worthless, then they can unwind their hedge, which means selling the common stock. And I think that is probably likely to happen tomorrow. So I think like this trade is basically done. It's dead. But I do want to talk about Coinbase on like a going forward basis, because I had a thought that I found interesting, or I think you might find interesting.
Yeah, hit me.
Okay, so when we were talking about Coinbase from the long term, like I'm on record saying $600 a share. You're on record for higher than that. And my thought was based around this idea. The previous bull market cycle top, we had transaction revenue that correlated to an earnings per share of X. And if you like even get back to that earnings per share level, then it would command a $600 share price, right? That was like my basic logic. Mm-hmm. And now I'm starting to think about, okay, transaction volume and transaction revenue is the name of the game. Are we actually going, like, is that a reasonable assumption that we're going to go back to previous transaction all-time highs? Like, because when I'm actually thinking about this, I'm getting a little disillusioned with like crypto trading at large. And my thought behind it is like, maybe in 2021 or before, like there was at least like a veil of an idea that some of this stuff will be useful. And we've like totally abandoned that idea to trading Geo Boden and Whiff Hat or and you're trading these things like unironically, like investing in these things. And I'm now thinking like, are people actually going to do this? And I don't think they will. Like, I don't think they will. And like right now we're at 30% of the peak transaction volume. And I don't think we're going to see 100 again, like 100%.
So I've talked about how I'm like very bullish long-term coin, and like a lot of that bull thesis revolves around stuff that doesn't have anything to do with trading volume. So I never put a ton of stock in that anyway. I think you just like that as this like kind of easy sanity metric that could be hit. I think your point about are we going to see the stupidity we saw last time is like a very interesting question. I don't think that that's a given. I've talked about how I think people are like a little too anchored to what has happened in the past. This is something people do, and they expect that the future will look like the past.
Right. Yeah. Because next bull market, of course. Like.
Yeah. Like so. Like if we could set the stage for what happened. Well, I guess we're not setting the stage. We're recapping what happened last bull run, right? We kind of came into this like post-COVID, everything had just been nuked to the ground, and then they just basically handed everybody buckets of money.
So much free money.
So much free money. And people were locked in their houses and bored.
Yeah, nothing to do but YOLO.
So it's very reasonable to say, like, will that happen again?
And like also like those, like the backdrop that you just described does not exist now. And also, like, the shit is dumber. Like, at least before, there was maybe a chance that some of the things that we were, YOLOing into, like, became some, like, internet-style behemoth, And now it's like, no. Like, we know they're not. Like, particularly the shit that people are currently buying. It's, people aren't buying sort of, like, the tech of the future in crypto, right? All that shit is kind of fading. It's like, it's either Bitcoin or it's memes and nothing in between.
I actually think that we're sort of reaching a point of peak pessimism in terms of crypto adoption, right? Like I think if I were to go take the pulse of like 100 random crypto Twitter type people, they would all express like an almost identical sentiment to you, where there's this sort of like acknowledgement that none of this shit is ever going to do anything, and they've just sort of embraced this narrative and are just treating it like a casino. I think when everybody starts believing that as the consensus, like I think we're pretty close to a reversal in that happening, right? And I think there's a few reasons for that. A, it's just like, yeah, sentiment, right? B, a lot of the stuff that I think you might say is like some of the most useful things we have in crypto, like actually already got like completely annihilated, and nobody wants to buy, like there's no kids talking about like buying Maker or
exactly.
like Aave or
exactly.
nobody's, it's not even anything on anybody's radar, right?
Right.
So it's just like a completely non-consensus trade at this point. But like one of these things has to work, or the space just goes to zero. Like if there aren't any applications ever, then yeah, like how sustainable is it to just trade memes forever? Probably not.
Yeah, and I think like what I'm trying to portray here is that my price target for Coinbase is getting kicked way further down the road, because like in the medium term, let's just say like the next 12 months, I don't think transaction revenues are going to improve to the level that I previously thought. And then the long tail stuff that you're really interested in takes a lot longer than 12 months to kick in, like stablecoin payments and, like all their ancillary businesses. It takes a lot longer. So like the medium term, like this like kind of like near to medium term looks kind of grim to me right now.
Yeah, like it's sub 1 year. I think that's a reasonable take. But like a coin is not the same thing to me in my portfolio as dog with hat, right? There's not anything in my brain that's just like, yeah, this dog with hat's going to be such an amazing 10-year return. Like, I don't think about it that way. So like I have coin in my brokerage account, and just like stuff I own in there, it's just like I just own it.
It's more of like a set and forget type.
Yeah, and it just fits in with like I am a long-term crypto believer. I have like some pockets of strategic nihilism, I think, which I think you have to have
Sure.
in order to be a trader in the space. Like you can't just be like this doe-eyed optimist who just gets crushed every 6 months because like things didn't work out the way you thought they were. There was some scam, right? Like that's just like, you just have to have thick skin like that to be in the space. But this stuff is going to work. Like stable coins are very, very magical. You are seeing big boys like doing integrations with these things on Solana, on Ethereum. In Coinbase has the potential to sort of become the new bank that just facilitates like the crypto
in
world,
the long term. Yeah.
you know, that kind of middleman role. And I just think it's like incredibly powerful. So I see plenty of outs there. I'm like still very bullish on base and L2s in general.
Dude, I'm bullish on all these things as well. I'm just saying that, you know, like in the next 12 months, we're not going to hit 600 like my price target said.
It's very unlikely we're going to hit 600 in the next 12 months.
So like I want to throw some numbers on it now, some like updated numbers. Like I did create a financial model for this, and where I'm landing on this is like the stock is pretty accurately priced even out to the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Like we're probably trading based on, you know, how the revenues come in and stuff, like at 30 to 40 times forward earnings. And I think that sounds reasonable for this company. It's like that's kind of reasonable for any kind of like growthy tech name, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a price perspective, like I don't think there's deep value in buying coin at $200 or $220. I do think there's like value in it around 170. I think there's a chance you could get it lower, right? I think there is a chance, like if we get kind of a bad down move, that you could see this thing in the 130s again. I think that would be like incredible value if you're able to get it there. I just love that I have this asset that's in my brokerage account that I think is generating tons of long-term value for me. And then I also can kind of strategically generate income by writing calls against the whole, like,
yes,
I have been lucky undoubtedly since I've owned this thing, but like I have never lost on any position. And I'm not writing like,
you're not going
6 standard deviation positions.
You're not going
like,
two. I always go 2.
Like I'm doing a lot of like kind of at the money stuff in just areas where I think there's going to be like a lot of resistance after we've had like kind of parabolic, short-term price moves and stuff like that. And it's done very well. So I feel comfortable kind of like eating these drawdowns because I'm able to hedge it with the options pretty well. And I don't know. I see people in the Discord. They're just like, "What should I sell? Should I sell here? Is this a good place to like de-risk?" And it's just like, look, if you're asking if you should de-risk, like you feel like you just have too much risk, then you should just de-risk because you feel like you have too much risk. But like to me, this isn't like a thing that like people should be freaking like day trading or swing trading. Like it's just like I just think it's just a really good like I'm generally bullish crypto and I want exposure, and I think people shouldn't freak out about trying to trade in and out of it too much.
Well, it's hard. I think like I'm stepping back now. It's hard for people not to kind of do moon math after the price move that we've seen in Coinbase already, right? It's like up 300% or 500% or whatever it's up.
More.
So more. Yeah. So like I can sort of like understand why there's an impulse to do that. But I'm now sort of like with a more pragmatic lens, just being like, okay, so this seems pretty reasonable right now.
Yeah. I agree.